Welcome back, folks, to the Mel Wright Show. It's episode 155. I've got a great guest, and I've got my co-host, who is a bit hot and bothered because it's getting rather hot in California. I think our guest looks a lot cooler, though, and that's Rick Cesari of Direct Branding. Rick is a legend, a bit of a legend in direct branding, and we've got some great topics in this episode. Rick, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, well, first I wanted to thank both you and Robert for having me on your show. I'm really excited about it and hope we can share some great information that your listeners or viewers can put into use in their own businesses.
That's great. And Robert, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. I am the founder of inboundrem.com, which is a real estate marketing company that focuses on SEO and lead generation for real estate.
Oh, sorry about that. I
No.
interrupted Robert, didn't I? And I am the CEO of Mel Wright. And what is Mel Wright? We're a SaaS platform that helps you get more leads for your real estate business. And we do that by extensive platform with emphasis on Facebook. So, Rick, looked at your CV, and what can you say? And you got, first of all, you've got a new book coming out. Would you quickly like to tell us a bit about the new book?
Sure, that's great. Usually we end with that, but I'd love to mention it. First of all, my first book I wrote is called Buy Now. That's available on Amazon. That came out in 2011. And talked about some of the earlier brands we built, like Juiceman and Breadman and Sonicare and OxiClean. This book, new book, comes out in the next couple of weeks. It's called Building $1 Billion Brands. And I don't want to scare your listeners away because almost every case study in the book started as a very small company. We go into quite a bit of depth on how we help GoPro grow from a startup to $1 billion. And a lot of lessons in there and a lot of stories that could help your listeners or viewers in their own business. And that'll be out in the next couple of weeks. You can pre-register for it at my website, rickcesari.com. And as we talk a little bit more today, I have a few things that your listeners can download, the 5 keys to building a great brand, and something on creating videos called Video Persuasion that helps them create better videos if they're using that marketing format. And you mentioned Facebook, so we can talk a little bit about video on Facebook at some point too.
Sounds fantastic. Obviously, I feel this could be a very valuable conversation to our listeners and viewers, because I think what a lot of real estate agents don't realise is that they are attempting, if they're going to be successful in the industry, what they've got to really do is build a local brand about them or the small team that works for them. And that's what they're really engaged in. Would you agree with that, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably the single most important thing. But let me get something really clear to your listeners, viewers, is that I don't believe in spending a lot of money on quote unquote building your brand. I believe in spending money using a lot of direct response advertising that's going to generate leads or revenue, whatever channel you use, whether that's Facebook, online, whatever, and doing it or putting the information out there in a way where you're generating a response, and then building your brand by providing lots of great content, and hopefully at the end of the day, the goal of that is to create leads, which generates sales, which generates revenue that you can plug back into what you're doing and broaden your personal brand. But I absolutely 100% agree with you that people should be focused on building their own personal brand and having, it just, there's so many benefits to it that it would be silly not to do that.
Got a question, Robert?
Actually, I don't know that I had a question as much as so I've been in sales and marketing my entire life, and I know some of the other products that you've represented, and I was just kind of hoping that you might give us a very brief rundown of some of the products that you have repped in the past, Rick, because I think a lot of our audience will know many of them and get as excited as I am to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's really interesting because you mentioned a lot of your listeners are in the real estate field. I actually graduated with a degree in biology and kind of didn't know what I was going to do once I graduated. And I started reading a lot of books on the best way to make money or how other people made a lot of money. And I'll date myself right now. This goes back to the late 80s. So I read it, and it turned out the books I was reading, it said a lot of millionaires were made in real estate. So I was very interested. I started reading every kind of book on how to buy and sell real estate, invest in it. And actually started going to a lot of seminars at the time. I'm a big believer in, you know, educating yourself as a means, or investing in yourself as a means of getting successful. But I went to this one seminar. I was living in Florida at the time that taught how to buy distressed property. And I went out and did what the person said. And in a week, bought a house, turned around, sold it, made $12,000. And I was kind of hooked. And I wanted to kind of, keep doing this investing in real estate. But I called up a local business magazine and told them about my story. And they actually did a story in the magazine. And that really helped boost the attendance at these local real estate seminars. And the owner of the business asked me to work with them. And I just had a knack for marketing. And we were able to build that up to one of the largest real estate businesses. And this was at the same time, I don't know if you guys have ever, go back this far, but there was a guy named Robert Allen who wrote a book called Nothing Down, and Albert Lowry. These are kind of like the original pioneers in doing real estate seminars. And so that's how I got started in marketing and quickly moved on. I was passionate about health, so I used the concepts I learned in promoting real estate seminars to promote juicing or health and nutrition seminars, and really use the same exact marketing model, but what we were marketing was just a different product. And we built up the Juiceman and Breadman brands, and we grew that business from 0 to 75 million in a little under 4 years, and then sold it to a company in Chicago called Sultan Housewares. Sultan came out with a product called the George Foreman Grill, and we did all the marketing for the George Foreman Grill. I'm living in Seattle at the time. I still am here now. And there was a local company called Optiva that had a sonic toothbrush, and helped them market and create the Sonicare brand. Later on, the same management team did the Clarisonic, which was a skin brush, again, very successful. And, people started coming to us. And one of the people that came to us was Joel and Max Apple, the founders of OxiClean. And we did all the early marketing for OxiClean. When I say early, literally, they were only selling on the Home Shopping Network. And we did a lot of infomercials and television marketing with Billy Mays. I don't know if you guys have ever seen him or heard of him. And, all this was fun because it was fun products. It really worked. And we're able to build up the businesses very quickly with the marketing we were doing. And probably the last and more recent or more relevant one that I worked on was the GoPro camera, and have a great story. I met the founder down at the outdoor retailing show in Salt Lake City. He was a surfer, and he was currently just selling those cameras to surfers out of the back of a Volkswagen bus. And I told him, I said, hey, we can build this into a big business. And he had a lot of passion and vision. And he, at the time, even though it was early, he thought he could build it into $1 billion company. And we started working with him using, a lot of 30-second TV spots and YouTube marketing. And they did get to $1 billion in sales in a little less than 8 years. So a lot of great stories, but also a lot of great information I can share on the marketing techniques we used, on how that are applicable to your listeners as well. Sure.
I would be fascinated to know what your take on, so these are all amazing stories, but there many, if not most of the services that you mentioned are product driven. Mm-hmm. Real estate is in a way product driven, but as a residential sales agent, which is 80 to 95% of our audience, they're going to be thinking about their neighborhood in Wichita, Kansas, and they're selling single family residences. So I'm interested to know, you run into that person in the grocery store and they're talking about marketing their business. What do you tell them? I'm Rick I'm Rick Cesari. I'm a legend. What do I tell you on how to market your business?
Yeah, we have to kind of just take things down to a smaller level, but the basic principles are the same. I'm a big believer. Every success I've had, I've done by putting information out. You hear a lot about content marketing, and content marketing is educating the consumer. And you guys do podcasts, which is really great content. I would tell that person to start doing. First of all, they have to start with a website. Basic common sense. As much good information that they could put on there that's going to help their end user. Once someone comes to their website, is going to be the most beneficial to them. You want people, and because you both are in lead gen, and you're driving people either to the top of a funnel or to a website, but you have to have a great user experience when they get to the website. And one of the best ways to do it is have really good applicable content. And that works on a big national level, but also works on a small, Wichita area level as well. The other thing, as much as education, good content out there, but I think also probably one of the single most effective tools, and this has probably come across like common sense that I use in all my marketing, is really good, authentic testimonials. So now they have this website, they might be just starting in real estate or they're already down the road a little bit. Anybody that they've had a chance to help and have had some success, they should automatically ask that person if they'd be willing to give them a written testimonial, an audio testimonial, and the best yet is a video testimonial. And I don't know about you, but if I go to a website and I see 10 different people saying, hey, this guy really helped me or this woman really helped me, I'm going to be more inclined to use that person's service than not. So kind of just same things I use in the bigger marketing are very applicable for a smaller local level marketing as well.
Okay. Many of these things are things that John and I have talked about in the past, and but it's interesting to hear how we can talk to a lot of different marketing experts located all over the country who've written books on various parts of that topic, and yet they all kind of say the same thing, become an expert. I've said the same thing. I love the fact that you just said the same thing. And also part of the services that we both provided are websites, but we didn't queue that up for you. You said that yourself. And so never mind. I don't provide us that service because I am a service provider. I provide that service because I believe that is what is needed to achieve the end result. If we can get away with just having a YouTube video up and a link that pointed somebody someplace, that would be the service that I provided. But having a place where you house all that information, testimonials and information about the person that provides the testimonials, and then real estate listings, all that information combined is the way to get good conversion in real estate, residential real estate, or at least that's the opinion that we.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned very early in the interview, I give away something on my website, rickcesari.com, called the 5 Keys to Building a Great Brand. Now, it doesn't matter if that brand's a product brand or a personal brand, but let me give, if I met that person in a grocery store and they're a real estate agent, okay, there's thousands of real estate agents across the country. One of the very first things I do when I'm building a brand is, find out what the unique selling proposition is. Why is this product unique compared to every other product out there? And a lot of times it might just have to do with how you position yourself in the marketplace. The unique selling, let me just give you an example. How many different coffee brands are there out there? There's literally thousands and thousands of coffee brands. And how would you stand out? So I'll just use one quick example. It's an extreme example. But there was a little coffee shop in Saratoga, New York, that basically served coffee to a lot of blue-collar workers. And one of the things they noticed is that they all would order their strongest type of coffee. So basically, his coffee shop was failing, but he basically took one of his coffee blends and renamed it Death Wish Coffee, the world's strongest coffee. and basically created an online brand and Amazon product with really differentiating his coffee from every other coffee in the marketplace. And that differentiation is the reason that people will gravitate to a brand or a personal brand. So when your listeners are out there and they're going through and doing a lot of similar type marketing, it really all starts with, what do you do that's different or better than anybody else in the marketplace? And then how do you communicate that to people so that they follow you? So that's one of the key things we do at any level of marketing.
Sure.
That's fantastic. I just got to. I'm sorry, Robert.
I know it's break time.
Yeah, we're going to go for our break, folks. Then we'll be back and we continue this fascinating discussion with Rick. It's just been amazing. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. We've had an amazing conversation. Off you go, Robert. I interrupted you.
No, I was just gonna. So Rick, so two things. Number one, for those of our listeners that are really just podcast listeners, and there are quite a few of those guys, for you, I'm going to spell Rick's name. His name is Rick. His last name is Cesari. So that would be rickcesari.com if you want to go check out his website and look for this downloadable content that he's mentioning. That's number one. Number two, I like to try to take broad concepts, Rick, and add a little bit more specificity to them so that our newer realtor users can have something actionable. So my suggestion would be, if you're a local realtor and you're trying to create your brand, look at an angle on the service side that you can provide that nobody else can provide. And that might be, for instance, you might do video walkthroughs. I'm a big believer in YouTube, Rick. I love the fact that a realtor can market off their own mobile phone camera. It doesn't need to be fancy. You just need to have something interesting to say to the camera. And so I would pick something that you might be passionate about that has to do with real estate, whether that's the yard, the landscaping, the way the house is built, what it is built with, anything, history of the builders. Pick a topic and become an expert in it. And if you talk about that topic, you'll probably be surprised how many people that will appeal to. I
agree with everything you're saying. Even if your expertise is delivering better service, you'd be surprised how many people out there aren't good at that. And again, if I just talk about the 5 keys, every one of them basically are things we've touched on a little bit. But the first is the unique selling proposition. The second is positioning. How are you positioning yourself in the marketplace? And that's really like, what's a category in your marketplace that you can focus on and do a little bit different that gives you an opportunity to grow? The third one is delivering value, and that value can be better service, better content, better education, all that information that can be on your website. The next 2 we talked a little bit about, and that is listen to your customers. Your customers will tell you exactly what you're doing right. They'll also tell you exactly what you're doing wrong, and you can make those changes and as you're moving forward. And the last is authentic testimonials. But I want to touch on something that you said, because we're talking about my book, $1 Billion Brands, but I've already started my next book, which is called Video Persuasion. And it's about how to make, using video, big believer in YouTube, and getting people to take a specific action. And part of when it's really important for building a personal brand is basically being your own spokesperson. And a lot of people are afraid that, I'm not an actor, or I can't do that. The authenticity that comes from being your own spokesperson is more important than proper pronunciation or anything. People love that, and people respond to your personality, and that's going to be the best way to start a following when people, making YouTube videos where you're your own spokesperson and people get a chance to see you on a regular basis.
Again, we're saying
nothing new. I mean, but that's what's important.
No, it's just fantastic that, because we've been hammering it away. Rick came on board as my co-host about 3 or 4 months ago. Time is flying,
Robert.
isn't it?
I'm Robert. He's Rick.
Roberts. Sorry, I
That's
got confused, Robert.
right.
And we've been hammering away, Rick, about all this, but it's great to get such strong confirmation of what we've been saying from a true expert like yourself.
Well, I want people to know it works on a small level. It works on a big level. And that one thing they have to understand, there's basic foundational marketing principles. Human nature doesn't change.
No.
And what works in a small level, you know, really what magnifies up to a big level is how well you're able to choose the right marketing vehicle and getting it out there. But yeah, just the principles work basically.
So kind of let's say we go back in, you get suddenly younger, you know, a little bit, and you decide a new career, and it's real estate. If you were starting off again as a real estate agent, how would you use video, YouTube and video to kind of promote yourself? Can you put some kind of structure upon the broad statements that we've made so far?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want your listeners to know that I'm not the technical person. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, here's the kind of camera you need to use and that type of thing. I'm more focused on strategy and content. But, you know, let me just give you, because we want to talk about video, and I just want to give you just a few video statistics that I've researched for my book coming up. But, you know, video is powerful because viewers retain 95% of a message when they watch it in a video compared to only 10% when reading it in a text. Social video generates 1,200% more shares than just text or images. Using video in an email leads to 200 to 300% increase in click-through rates, and including video on landing page can increase conversion rates by 80%. Now, again, this isn't anything new to you guys. You do a lot of Facebook marketing, but I just really want to get across to your listeners that how powerful video is and that they need to incorporate it in their marketing. So to answer your question, if I was just getting started now, it would go back to building my own website that's personally branded. Obviously, it's very easy to do with the different resources that are out there. You don't have to hire a company to do that. I mean, you know, there's so many different companies now that you can kind of plug in and do that. And then I would be focusing on a couple areas, creating good content for in there. I would definitely do video. And one of the things with whatever you do, whether it's video, audio, blogging, there has to be a consistency to it. And, you know, I wrote down a little note. I think you guys are on episode 155. You can't just put out one video and expect that to be the answer to what you're doing. If you're going to start doing something, whether it's a blog, YouTube videos, make a goal to do, you know, one every 30 days. Then as you get at the knack of it, one every 2 weeks, and then maybe one every week. You know, I had people come up to me and say, oh, you should never send emails, more than one email a week. And some of the most successful companies email sometimes several times a day. Because the thing is, if somebody's interested in your message and your information, they usually want more of it. And they get frustrated if they don't. So again, going back, create my own website. Basically, I would just start populating it. Initially, if you can't do video in the beginning, like I said, just with written content, but at some point you got to get to doing the video, and basically taking that, and then I think this is where, not to complicate things, that you have to be able to share it through several different. We repurpose video all the time to not only use on YouTube, but Instagram, Facebook. So when we're shooting one piece of video, it might seem like it might be a little expensive, but we're going to repurpose that and use it through almost every social platform there is. Because here's the thing. I'm a big believer in not forcing people to go through one particular channel, or your best customers don't come from one particular channel. And the more you can get your information out in front of people in different ways, the way they like to consume it, the more effect or benefit that you're going to have.
Yeah, it's amazing, because I think that's the beauty of video, is that it is so you can repurpose it in so many ways, can't you, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when we just use the testimonial, for example, when I sit down with somebody to do a testimonial, I basically interview them like you guys are interviewing me today, and I'll talk to that person. 20 minutes on the short end, but sometimes if there's a lot to say, as long as 40 minutes. So now all of a sudden I have 40 minutes of content, and I don't use that all at once, but that is the kind of the start of a video library. And usually I'll use a 1 or 2 minute soundbite or edit together a couple different parts of the testimonial. And really you're just starting to get a little content, and the more video you have access to, the more you can repurpose it and use it through these different channels. So don't go out and look for a testimonial that someone you just sold a house to and say, tell me what you liked. Ask them if you can sit down and interview them, just like we're doing here today, for 15 or 20 minutes and get a whole bunch of content as opposed to one little soundbite.
Yeah, it's much more natural, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's that. I think I may have learned something.
Yeah.
I've gone against that. I've told a lot of my clients just to do 1 minute quick snippets, making the assumption that the client is going to be short on time. But you know, the funny thing is, now that I'm really deeply thinking about that, I think that that's me casting my own relationship with real estate agents who are always too busy and never have enough time. I bet you anything that if they've spent many hours or days in cars riding around with somebody, probably asking for 10 or 15 minutes is not the same thing as me asking my marketing client for 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. And if they're a happy client, hopefully that's, you can't grow a business unless you're providing a good service. So you've provided a good service. Most people are afraid to ask people to give them a testimonial. And, over my career, I've literally done thousands and thousands and thousands of testimonials. People want to be interviewed. They want to say nice things. And if they don't, they'll tell you up front. And don't take it as a rejection. That's just somebody's personal opinion. But I found that probably over 90% of the people I asked to give a testimonial agree to do it. And then you just tell them, we're going to talk for 15 or 20 minutes. And once they get into the conversation, if it's a good conversation, they'll just keep going. And that, again, gives you more content. But I go back to the 1 minute snippet. You are basically then going to be pulling out the best 1 or 2 minute little snippets out of that conversation to use in your marketing. You're not going to put up the whole 40-minute interview. You're going to have to edit it down some.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's great. We're going to close up the podcast part of the show. Hopefully Rick will agree, and we continue the discussion for another 10 minutes, which you'll be able to see on the Mailrite website, the whole interview, and also on our YouTube channel. See, we're using the video in multiple ways. We listen to Rick. And Rick, how can people find out more about you and your great insights, Rick?
Yeah, great. So there's a lot of information on my personal website, which is rickcesari.com. And, it's my first name, Rick, R-I-C-K, and my last name is C-E-S-A-R-I, rickcesari.com. And they can go there, find out more information, how to contact me, and then also download not only the 5 keys to building the great brand, but I have also another little one about video persuasion and content that if you're going to be producing a video, kind of some of the things you need to do to make it interesting.
That sounds great. Thanks so much. And Robert, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
They can always just go to inboundrem.com. That's the word inbound, then RobertEdwardMichael.com.
That's great. And if you want to find out about more about me and what Mailrite is about, just go to the Mailrite website. We've been busy helping clients, and we got a load of interviews. It's literally a university course on the Mailrite website from some of the most leading and insightful experts on online marketing and real estate that you will find at the present moment, I feel. And you should go and look at some of those previous interviews. We'll be back next week, folks, where we'll be talking to an expert or having a discussion about a particular subject that will help you get more success for your real estate business and for your family. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye. Right, Rick. Got another question, Robert.
It's like you're reading my mind today. I do have another question. I'm just kind of curious because I know what my opinion is on this. But Rick, is there anything in particular that you look for? So I personally, when I go to somebody's website and I'm reviewing a service provider of any kind or even a product provider, I still to this very day take a very deep look at testimonials. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious, when you're shopping for you, for Rick, not for your businesses, not as a consultant, just as you, as a guy that's going out and says, I want to purchase something, like hand to God, do you read testimonials? And if you do, what do you look for?
Oh, I absolutely read testimony. I still think they're the single biggest source. And, we didn't get, we could talk for hours and get down, but, testimonials work so well. And I can kind of gauge, and I think you can too, if it's a fake testimonial, people do that. And obviously I always use that word, authentic testimonials, but that's the first thing I read. And think about Amazon, people that market products on Amazon and the Amazon reviews. Also those are testimonials for the product. And you're going to be more likely to buy the product that's got more 5-star reviews than one that's got less. And so they're just really, really effective. It's something I've always used. And there's a kind of a psychological reason behind that. And we didn't talk about this on the podcast, but you've probably heard the concept of social proof. And basically it's a psychological concept that actually exists in people's minds, that when they're in a certain situation and trying to make a decision, if they don't know how to proceed, they look to see what the other guy is doing and then do the same thing, or they mirror that behavior. And that's one of the reasons good testimonials work. You're trying to make a decision to hire a real estate agent or buy a product, and you're not sure which one. It's the one with the best testimonials or the one that more people are flocking to that you're going to buy, just because of the psychological underlying reasons for that. So I started using them and then wanted to know why they work so well, and started doing a lot of research into it. And I'm just, again, I've mentioned it several times in the show, just a big believer in using them. I answer your question. I personally, that's really the first thing I look at, because everything else is really self-generated. And like if you're building a website and you say a lot of nice things about yourself, I take that with a grain of salt, because you're promoting yourself in your own best interest. But third-party testimonials are the best way to overcome objections, increase credibility, and create that social proof that you need to make somebody to break down the barriers for purchase.
Sure.
Long answer.
And that is, well, no, and that's a very good answer. I also do, when I'm looking at testimonials, one, I'm usually, like, if it's Amazon, I'm finding out how many people have thumbs upped it to see how useful it is. And I have a weird tendency. I always look at the very best, and I look at the very worst. Mm-hmm. I think everybody looks at the very best.
Right.
I don't know that everybody looks at the very worst. Because to me, it's a matter of, I want to see what the happiest person has said or the most informative person has said. And then I want to see what the most either irrational or poorly served person has said. And that's how I gauge what my experience might be. On the upper end, if I am happy with the product or the service, this is what that might look like. And on the lower end, like, did they make off with this person's money? Or like, what happened to this person that's so unhappy or gave a 1-star review? And if the worst thing that has happened is something I can survive with, I oftentimes, that is how I gauge my purchasing decision.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I do the same thing. I look at all the testimonials, and one of the things when we market one of these products at the very beginning, a lot of times they're out in the marketplace on a small scale, and we actually sit down and talk to 15 or 20 different people and go through this whole, 15, 20 questions, 40-minute interview. And by the time you're done talking to 15 or 20 people, you start to see trends, what they like, what they don't like. And it helps you emphasize, those are the things that you're going to emphasize in their marketing. But also when it comes to things you don't like, that's an opportunity to fix your product or service. But also if it's just an objection or question that needs to get answered, you can answer that up front in your marketing as a way of, again, breaking down the barrier to purchase. So looking at both the positive and the negative is really, really important way to get the right information, both on a personal level, but also on a bigger marketing level.
Right.
It's
Well,
quite. Go on, sorry, Robert.
Great. No, I'm done. Go.
Well, it's quite surprising. I also, when I'm looking at online service for my business, I was looking at one this morning, Rick, and I always send through whatever contact medium they offer. I always ask a pre-sales question, because if they can't really be that bothered to respond to a sales inquiry, how good do you think their support's going to be when you have a real problem?
Absolutely. I think it's true. And I agree 100% with that, for sure.
If they can't be bothered to, and you do, some agents are really fantastic about that, but some other agents, aren't quite so good. But I don't think I'm the sharpest tool, but I don't think I'm the bluntest either. So if I do that, I think a lot of your possible clients are probably doing that as well. I'm very respectful of your time, Rick. So we're going to end the show now, folks. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Rick. And it's been a real blast, and I really enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you, Rick.
You're both welcome, and I really enjoyed the time spending with you. I like sharing what knowledge I have, and hopefully it can help your listeners. So thank you.
So we'll see you next week, folks, where we'll hopefully, we'll have a fascinating internal discussion, or we can have a true expert like Rick on the show and offer some real value to you. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye. Bye.